Hi there, it's Felicia, one of the interpretive naturalists here at the Elkhart County Parks, and I'm back again to continue our Nature A to Z series, this time with the letter Q, Q for Quercus. If that word doesn't sound very familiar, Quercus is going to be the genus that all oak tree species are going to belong to. So there's lots of common names, but if you were to look at the scientific name of an oak tree, you'll notice that the first word is going to be Quercus. And we actually have just about 18 different oak species here in Indiana, and there's over 500 different species in the entire world. One species is going to be the black oak, and that's the tree that I'm sitting under today. It's in Oxbow County Park. It's pretty big, and one of my favorite things about oak trees, specifically this one, is the amount of shade it provides. So on a day like today, where it's a little sunny, kind of toasty, it's nice to get a break under this black oak. So how did I know it was a black oak? So there's things that all oaks are gonna have in common. The most notable is probably going to be acorns. So when I came up to this tree, I could have looked a little bit closer around the trunk or out of, on the branches, look for some acorns. You can look at the bark. So oak trees tend to have kind of scaly, deep furrowed bark. Another thing is the leaves tend to be very lobed, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But those are all things that all oak trees are really going to have in common. And what makes it a little bit easier when identifying oak trees is they're split into two groups. So there's red oaks and then there's going to be white oaks, all right? And there's things that they have in common. They are oak trees, but there are things that make them a little bit different. So I'll start with this tree. So I was able to take a leaf from this black oak, and right away, looking at this leaf, I knew it belonged to the red oak group. That's because if you look at the ends of these lobes, so these are the lobes, they're almost like the little arms of the leaf. These lobes have bristled points at the end, all right? So along with just having a pointed lobe, there's also a little bristle. And I'll insert a picture so you can see a little more clearly, but right away, that's gonna tell me that this is a red oak. So along with bristled lobes, or pointed and bristled lobes, red oaks, they take 2 growing seasons to produce their acorns or for their acorns to mature. So it'll take 2 seasons for the acorn to be mature enough to actually fall off the tree. Another thing is, if you were to cut down a red oak, or if you're shopping for furniture or flooring, you'll notice that red oak, the wood tends to have a pink, almost salmon colored hue to it, which makes it different than the white oak. And in the park, we do have a couple of species of white oak, but one that I found right here, this is a swamp oak. And right away, if I look at those lobes, they're not pointed, they're rounded, and I don't see any bristled ends. So that tells me that this tree is going to be a member of the white oak group. And then again, some more things that white oaks will have in common is it only takes 1 growing season for those acorns to mature. Also, if you were to, look for flooring or make furniture with a white oak, you'll notice that there's no red or pink hue, but with the white oak. But both red oak and white oaks are notorious for having really thick bark. So, they're great for furniture because it's really strong, and it's also really great in environments that are exposed to fire. So prescribed burns is something that happens even at some of our parks. We do occasionally, but it's important to maintaining certain habitats, and oaks tend to do very good in those habitats because they have thick bark that's able to withstand the heat and the fire of a prescribed burn. And if we rewind a little bit to go back to what all oaks have in common, I talked about acorns. So I was able to snag some acorns off of the swamp oak that I found. And acorns are another thing you can look at to help you identify the species of oak. But all acorns are gonna start from flowers, right? So there's 2 flowers, there's male and female flowers on an oak tree. The most notable are gonna be the male flowers, and those are called catkins. They hang down. The female flowers are a lot smaller. When pollinated, will produce these acorns. And there's all different sizes of acorns, but inside an acorn, there's only 1 seed. Every once in a while, you'll have 2 or 3, but all acorns will contain at least 1. And oaks produce lots of them. Some of them produce 1,000 acorns a year. And they'll start producing acorns once they're about 20 years old. And the reason they have to produce so many is because they don't have a very good reproductive success rate. That's because lots of animals eat acorns. Actually, over 100 different vertebrates will eat acorns and have acorns a part of their diet. So because the tree is competing with all these animals, they have to produce so many so that the chances of them being able to produce saplings somewhere else in the forest increases. Along with the acorns helping these animals, the leaves actually support over 500 different kinds of butterflies and moths. Actually, native oaks support the most butterflies and moths than any other native tree species here in the United States. So having oaks a part of the forest or a part of any habitat is really important to those animals that are going to be present there. Another thing I said kind of at the beginning was about how oaks are big. They offer a lot of shade, and oaks can be over 100 feet tall. Most species actually are anywhere from 60 to 100 feet tall, and they can live for a very, very long time. Actually, most oak trees have a lifespan of 1,000 years. The oldest oak tree here in the United States is believed to be 600 years old. And again, I said their lifespan's about 1,000, so that tree still has 400 years to live before it does start to die. So there are oak trees out there in the world that are older, but they think that once a tree reaches 1,000 years old, slowly parts of the tree will start to die off. So oak trees live for a really long time. They grow to be very large, depending on where they are. So in the forest, you see the oak trees tend to be taller. Their branches start way further up the trunk. But on this tree, this big black oak tree that is out here in the lower field at Oxbow County Park, it has lots of space to spread out its branches. So getting some of these leaves were a lot easier than getting the leaves of the white oak or the swamp oak that was growing in a forest. You know, if a tree does live a really long time, you can look at some of those things. So I can see, hey, this black oak has long branches lower to the ground, so that tells me that for most of its life, it's probably had a pretty open area. But then if I go into the forest and notice some of those oaks, I can see they're just as impressive in trunk size, but their branches start way higher up. So that tells me that it's probably grown in a forest for most of its life. So it's pretty cool and interesting to look at them. I know we have some other really impressive oak trees here in Elkhart County. So stay tuned the rest of these 2 weeks to learn a little bit more about how to identify some of our species, and then maybe a little history to some of the oak trees we have around here. So thanks for watching.